Thank you, Sandy. Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Door County. My name is Hank Woolston. Today I'm privileged to be your service leader. Welcome all in here, out there, everywhere. And a general reminder, please, to turn off any sound-making devices that you might be carrying with you today. And if you have any difficulty hearing, raise your hand and we'll make an adjustment to the system. A little different today. If you look at your program, there are some words under welcome and announcements. And I'd like to invite you to join me in reading from your order of service a communal welcome in which we can all come together to welcome each other together. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, and wherever you are on your spiritual journey, we welcome you. In this place, there is room for your questions, your stories, your laughter, your doubt, your grief, and your most authentic self. We aspire to be a community of unconditional love, and we welcome you. Welcome as well all who seek company and kinship in and amongst those whose work and fame has come to represent the values and the valor of Unitarian Universalism in an oft-troubled, forgetful, and less than forgiving world. Men and women, both as diverse and as impactful as John and John Quincy Adams, Susan B. Anthony, Clara Barton, Linus Pauling, Paul Revere, Kurt Vonnegut, Adlai Stevenson, Bela Bartok, Frank Lloyd Wright, Florence Nightingale. And let us not forget one of my favorites, Ambrose Bierce, who defined Unitarian as one who denies the divinity of a Trinitarian. We are truly all joined here together today and every day and in every way. First time here? First time in a while? It's our custom to invite visitors to stand and introduce themselves if they're willing, and gives us a brief chance to get to know them. And then we invite you to come to our post-service coffee clutch, and then we'll have a talk back subsequent to that. And so, and also a reminder, if you're a first-time visitor, please sign our guest book in particular, okay? And so any first-time visitors or people who haven't been here for a while, why don't we all stand at one time? Is that okay? So any folks meeting those criteria? Okay, please.
Scott from Madison, Wisconsin, FUS.
Super, welcome. Welcome indeed.
I'm Sarah from Madison and FUS, but I also, my Unitarian family goes back many generations.
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Julie Gamslin, and I'm from northern Nevada in a small town called Verdi, which is close to North Lake Tahoe. I'm a member of the Mission Peak Unitarian Universalist Church in Fremont, California. However, my husband and I moved 4 years ago to northern Nevada, and I'm still a member, and we Zoom, and I'm on 4 committees, and I can't give it up. Our congregation.
Welcome, welcome. This is the time we allot for announcements. And I'd like to invite anybody who wants to share an announcement with the fellowship to raise your hand, and Bob will bring the mic to you, and then you can go ahead and make your announcements. So do we have any announcements today? Marianne? Oh, I'm sorry, Carol.
For those of you who have been here for the last few months, you've heard me standing up and talking about SAIL, Senior Advocates for Independent Living. Our meeting is going to be this Thursday. Board meets at 1 o'clock. the general meeting of anybody else who wants to come. Hopefully, some of you will be at 2. And it's at the Sister Bay Fire Station.
Thank you, Carol. That sounds sober.
I'm Marianne O'Dowd, and I just want to remind everyone that we are now officially in the start of our community partner year and raising money to support 3 important organizations: the Door County Housing Partnership, Northern Door Children's Center, and the Climate Change Coalition of Door County. And there is now a button on the donate section of our website earmarked for these contributions. And then next week will be our first in-service collection, which we'll be doing the 3rd Sunday of every month. And then as a reminder, everything is put in one pot, and at the end of the year, it's divided among these 3 groups for the important work they're doing.
Thank you, Marianne. Carrie?
Yes, Carrie Link. Diane Daniel, this is in reference to Carol's announcement about sale. Evidently, it is only for people who live in Sister Bay and north, nothing south. So that was kind of surprising.
All right. We're getting into the debate session of our service.
Okay, to clarify, SAIL is the division, I guess you could call it, of this sort of a group. Ours is from Liberty Grove, which goes down as far as Grove Road before it hits Bailey's Harbor, and everything north from that, not counting Washington Island because they have their own. And these are getting set up. So there's one for south of our area that is being set up in Sturgeon Bay. They're calling theirs Bay to Lake Neighbors. But they didn't get started until after we did. So you're not hearing anything about them yet. If you are if you live in one of the areas south of Liberty Grove. So, but if you live in Liberty Grove, north, come.
Any other announcements? Okay, thanks. Let me light the chalice. And I light it with these words. This lit chalice has but one flame, but that flame enlightens all, warms all, regardless of whence they came. Please stand if able and join in the singing of hymn 315, This Old World. Following the singing, please remain standing for our unison affirmation and reciting the doxology. We gather together to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, to celebrate within a caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. Please be seated. Joy lifts the heart and spirit. Concern weighs down the heart and spirit. Sharing a joy within a community of friends raises it to greater heights. Sharing a concern within a community of friends provides balm and lightens its weighty burden. If you have a joy or a concern you'd like to share with us, we hope you'll share it. Please note that this service is live streamed, and so if you're going to mention a name, I hope you've cleared that ahead of time or whatever. And as before, Bob will carry the mic to you once I recognize you. So do we have any joys and concerns folks might like to share with the fellowship? Meg.
I'm hoping that my joy will align with Dick Smythe's talk this morning and his message to us. I know that probably most of you read in the Pulse this weekend the update on the Rowleys Bay Resort, which had been an icon and burned to the ground. And the good news that there is a very likelihood of a buyer in place. So what I've learned is, and I have verified this from neighbors, is that about 10 days ago, a van pulled up into the parking lot with logo and words that said Potawatomi Forest County. And out came about 6 smartly dressed men in business suits. And the owner has since told the neighbors that this is going to be the new buyer. Now, the joy is that there will be no development. They are returning the property to its natural state, to the land, and that there is this movement across the state of Wisconsin where the tribes are buying up land and doing the same thing. And the reason is because we've not taken very good care of it. And also, as we know, that's very much their value to do so. And they always look ahead 7 years as to the ramifications of any decision, and they don't believe that we've made good decisions about use of the land either. So in finishing, my hope is that as soon as this has come to fruition, that our esteemed program committee will invite a tribal representative to come and be our message person for the day, hear about what they're doing, learn about them, and welcome them to our neighborhood.
Thank you. I'm Jamie Hanratty, and I bet you know what I'm going to talk about. The theater in Door County is really thriving. for the most part, but because there's so much of it, it's become very competitive. But I just want to, for your dollars and your time, so I just want to point out to you some things that you should not miss. How many have seen Fisherman's Daughters? Everybody, tell your friends, get to see this. It's pretty much about the establishment of Peninsula Park. And so it's an absolutely brilliant production, written and music and lyrics, everything by Katie Dahl. So you will enjoy that thoroughly. The other one, Northern Sky, has just opened a show to great acclaim called Girls on Sand. Absolutely touching, hysterical, all the things that Northern Sky does. It's their answer to Guys on Ice. It's now Girls on Sand. So you really must get to see that. And then there's Door Shakespeare. Of course, they're doing Romeo and Juliet and Emma. How many of you have seen Emma? A few of you. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. But if any of you want to talk to Joe about it, just call us up. We'll have coffee with you. Or if you get a group together, we'll come and talk to you before the show. Thank you very much. And I want to follow up on what Meg said. Before we invite these people, we really do need to have a land use statement. I propose that we just use the very simple, lovely one that Northern Sky uses. So it would be very embarrassing to invite these people without a land use statement before they speak. Thank you.
Mary Smythe. Mark Richards isn't here today. He's giving a service in speaking in Chicago. So I'm not quite sure what he would say, but on his behalf and our behalf, I'm hoping that the use of an AK-47 rifle on Saturday alerts people that we really, really, really need some sort of a gun control ban.
Trish?
Trish Black here. This is a joy for all of us to share as part of this beloved community. First off, as the chair of the Caring Committee, I'm always so astounded and amazed to send out a request for need. Sometimes the list seems big and heavy. We just recently put one out for 13 meals, 13 consecutive days for our beloved Dottie. And within about 48 hours, all slots have been filled. And so the generosity is always astounding to me. And then also, with Dottie's permission, to give you all an update for those who may not have known, she somehow spent 8 days in the hospital. And I don't know how anybody spends 8 days in the hospital in these days, because usually 48 hours is your insurance limit. They boot you out the door. But she was indeed very ill. Probably the main thing was a tick-borne illness. It is a wild and dangerous world out there, people, today. That situation is just worsening by the day, so be careful out there. But she has made an astounding recovery. I mean, Dottie is, in so many ways, to so many of us, the Energizer Bunny. She just kind of keeps on moving and going. Yesterday, she and Lynn made a trek out to Ellison Bluff. They also went out to Newport and walked down to the beach. She's slow. She's, tired easily. But she's our comeback girl, and so we celebrate all of that with her. And thank you for those who've supported her.
To celebrate Bastille Day, which is today, you can come hear some very wonderful French music at the Woodwalk Gallery at 5 o'clock this afternoon. Let's see, it's music by Debussy, Borde, and Vincent Dandy with harp and flute, and it's just gorgeous. And to add a little more Frenchification, we have a sommelier, and for $20, you can get 3 glasses of wine paired with the music. And he explains why the wine that he's chosen fits with the kind of music that it goes with. It's great fun, and it's a wonderful way to celebrate Bastille Day. And this coming week, the music with Midsummer's Music is with our composer in residence, Will Healy, and he's bringing a friend from New York. I forget his first name. His last name is Meyer, and his father is the very famous Edgar Meyer, the
Bassist.
bass player.
Yeah.
Peggy, yes, what? George. Oh, George. Okay. So that, look, there will be several concerts starting next weekend, and come and have some fun.
I have two joys, and I guess I have a concern too. One joy is that we went to see Emma last night, and it was wonderful. So I was going to email Joe, but it was really worthwhile. I loved it, and I encourage you guys to go. And the other is we went to see Bastille Day Thursday night, and it was wonderful as well. And we had the additional pleasure on that day of also having Peter's comments on the French period, the Belle Epoque, from about 1870 to about 1920. And it was very rewarding, both the music as well as Peter's comments. So it was a lot of fun. The concern, kind of echoing what Mary said, except not putting the onus on gun control, which should be there, but not just for that reason, for Sandy Hook, for Columbine, for all the other things, but just more concern about the divisiveness in our country that would lead someone to do that. And it's a sad state, I'm afraid. The reading. This is our home, but not just ours. And I call this a door countification, inspired by the words of Laura Bogle. We gather here to remember this is our home, but not just ours. This land we live on, this water we drink, this air that we breathe, these waters upon which we sail forth and fish, these forests that give us their healing green, these flowers that give us their colors and fragrance, these fields that give us our daily bread, these stars that lighten and brighten the night sky, the wilderness and the tame backyards, all of it our home. We remember the ancestors who have lived on this land and who have shaped it. First, the Potawatomi, the Ho-Chunk, the Menominee, the Ojibwe, the Sauk, then the Swedes, the Norwegians, Moravians, the Belgians, and yes, even the Dutch. There were settlers, farmers, hunters, and fishermen. There were artists, craftspeople, explorers, business people, engineers, builders, scientists, teachers, workers, entrepreneurs, and leaders. There were mothers and fathers and children. We inherit their choices. We honor the animals and the creatures that have made their home on this wonderful land, the ones here now and the ones that used to be here. We envision the future generations who will live on this land and let their voices fill our hearts. We gather to remember this is our home, but not just ours. We rely on your generosity of spirit and service and shekel. This offertory addresses the latter. As the offering plate passes before you, please give generously. And a reminder that you can also make contributions and donations via our website at uufdc.org. Donate now. And if this is your first time visiting with us, we regard your presence as a gift and hope you do as well. Now, take a moment to find your own peace and solitude, a place of your own, far from the sights and sounds of the world around us. Dick Smythe needs no introduction, so I won't give him one. My friend Dick Smythe.
11 years ago, I stood up here and gave some remarks entitled Our Invisible Minority, meaning at the time, Native Americans.
That's one way of putting it. Okay.
So much for modern technology. Okay. The talk I gave here 11 years ago represented the sad story of how we white folks have often mistreated our Native brothers and sisters. And since that talk, we have occasionally here reminded ourselves that our country, our state, our county, our lands, our visitors, our villages, all occupy land that originally belonged to Native Americans. And keeping that in mind, I have to think of a comment that I read some time ago where an Indian elder was speaking to a white man. The conversation went like this. Nice place you got here, sir. Your country, my land. So this morning I want to revisit our Native Americans. But I want to give a very different focus from my earlier talk. I want to reflect the people of great intelligence and unbounded determination. And I will discuss two aspects of Indian life that I would guess most of us either never heard about or don't pay much attention to. First, let's take a look at an experience that all of us North Americans recently went through, namely COVID. And in doing so, let's keep in mind a few facts. Many of our indigenous people live far from any form of health care. They face some of the worst poverty in the country, and that's coupled with a deep-seated distrust of federal authorities. They have ample reason to distrust federal authorities. In the early days of the COVID epidemic, Native Americans were dying at a rate 2.5 times as great as ours. 2.5 times. But despite that fact, the desire to protect their community and preserve their culture remained intact. Now, I would hope that none of us need to be reminded that our Indian brothers and sisters had long-standing ample reasons to distrust federal authorities. These folks share a collective experience known as blood memory. Blood memory. Those are shared experiences and memories passed down from generation to generation to generation. Sometimes these memories were joyful. More often, they were traumatic and rooted in grief. I doubt that we white folks can ever fully understand the constant stress and fear shared by many of our indigenous people. Please remember, the 18th century, as European settlers sought to colonize indigenous lands, they weaponized germs by giving blankets infected with smallpox to Native Americans to slow down Native resistance and to decimate Native populations. And in addition to these smallpox-laden blankets, they brought measles and influenza to Native Americans who had no resistance to them whatsoever. This is probably hard to believe, but it is estimated that during this colonization time, 90 to 95% of Native Americans died. Colonial violence led to other public health injustices and crises within indigenous communities. In the 19th century, our government forced Native peoples into reservations, disenfranchising Native populations and creating to this day vast injustices in access to public health services. And I didn't know this before, but during the 1970s, our Family Planning Services and Population Research Act led to the sterilization of Indian women. And according to Time magazine, between 1970 and 1977, at least 25% of Native American women of childbearing age were sterilized. Now, despite this blood memory, I have to say that the rumors and conspiracy theories that plagued us white folks during COVID, gained less traction among our indigenous brothers and sisters. These brave and intelligent men and women were vaccinated at a rate 24% higher than we white folks. 24% higher. They also were vaccinated at a rate higher than Asian Americans, Latinos, and African Americans. And keep in mind that the US suffered more COVID-related deaths than any other country on the face of the earth. And we suffered a higher death rate than any other major wealthy nation. Now, community. Community is absolutely crucial to any indigenous response. They identify who's most vulnerable, and then they strategize how to best to protect them. And this is done even when facing problems that we don't have to deal with. For example, the Navajo Nation, the largest collection of indigenous people in this country. 1 in 3 families have no running water. So every day, they have to travel many miles in some cases, several hours, to bring home water for use that day. So strict but sometimes necessary stay-at-home orders then was a hugely disadvantaged these Native American people. It disadvantaged them in their ability to survive, let alone do common household behaviors that we take for granted, like washing hands. You need water to wash hands. Yet despite all that, Indigenous communities are showing how community care and self-determination can provide security and serious solutions during difficult times. I have to wonder, do any of us pay attention to any of this behavior that we're inflicting on our brothers and sisters? Okay, a few minutes ago I would mention two aspects of Indigenous life that most of us probably know very little about. Community care in response to COVID was one. But the second one I want to comment on is North American Indigenous peoples' oratory. It is simply remarkable, absolutely remarkable. Their language was direct, full of images and pathos, and often complete with a marvelously clear understanding of current and likely future situations. Now, in the few minutes we have today, there's no way I can do justice to this capability. Some orations were very short, others much longer. Some were delivered on the run, so to speak, but others were carefully crafted speeches that lasted 2 or more hours. The orators often displayed a deep understanding and usually a harsh criticism of European American ways and culture. Behind and within many of their words are shocking histories of tragedy and devastation. In the past, many of their orations called for war, but more simply called for a return to the old ways. Now, there have been extraordinary speeches by Native Americans for many years, since Europeans arrived and before Europeans arrived. And there have been numerous explanations for how come these people talk so fluently. Well, one reason that's often given is that they had an oral culture. Now, that necessitated and encouraged the art of public speaking. And furthermore, many of the tribes were democratically organized. And in most cases, not every case, but in most cases, chiefs ruled only by acknowledged consent. So they had to speak well. And they had to fit their actions to their words, or they might lose their followers. And I want to start with a brief but wonderful example of Native American humor. It was given by an unnamed Iroquois and reported by Ben Franklin. The year was 1744. And he told this story of a speech given at a council between the Indians and the government of Virginia, following the Virginians' offer for college education to some of the Native American men. I'm sorry, gals, but it was just men at that time. So here's a Native American response, and I think it's absolutely priceless. Quote, "We know that you highly esteem the kind of learning taught in your colleges, and that the maintenance of our young men, whenever with you, would be very expensive to you. We are convinced, therefore, that you mean to do us good, and we thank you heartily for your proposal. But you who are wise, must know that different nations have different conceptions. And you will therefore not take it amiss if our idea of this kind of education is not the same as yours. We have had some experience with your college education. Several of our young people were formally brought up at the colleges of your choice, and they were instructed in all your sciences. But when they came back to us, they were bad runners, ignorant of every means of living in the woods, unable to bear either hunger or cold, knew neither how to build a cabin, take a deer, or kill an enemy. spoke our language imperfectly, and were therefore fit neither for hunters, warriors, or counselors. They were totally good for nothing. We are, however, not the less obliged by your kind offer, though we decline to accept it. And to show our grateful sense of your kind offer, if the gentlemen of Virginia will send us a dozen of their sons, we will take great care of their education, instruct them in all we know, and make men of them. Classic. I just love it. And not only did our Native friends have no interest in a college education for the young men, but they had no interest in a white man's religion either. Here is Red Jacket, a great Seneca Indian chief and exceptional oratorical talent who had only contempt for the white man's religion. I want to briefly share some excerpts from two of his speeches given to a gathering of white missionaries and agents. Quote, brother, great numbers of black coats, meaning priests, great numbers of black coats have been among the Indians. With sweet voices and smiling faces, they offered to teach them the religion of the white people. And our brethren in the East listened to them. They turned from the religion of their fathers and took up the religion of the white people. What good did it do them? Are they any more friendly one to another than we are? No. They are a divided people. We are united. They quarrel about religion. We live in love and friendship. Besides, they drink strong waters. And they have learned how to cheat, how to practice all the other vices of the white people without imitating any of their virtues. Brother, if you wish us well, keep away and do not disturb us. Again, a quote, we understand that your religion is written in a book. If it was intended for us as well, why did not the Great Spirit give it to us? Mm-hmm. And not only to us, but why did he not give it to our forefathers, along with the knowledge of how to understand it? We know only what you tell us. But how shall we know when and what to believe, being so often deceived by the white people? Brother, we do not wish to distort your religion. We only want to enjoy our own. After his campaign of revenge on the settlers, the so-called Black Hawk War, Black Hawk and his allies were hunted down and killed or taken prisoner by U.S. soldiers. Black Hawk surrendered to Prairie du Chien, and there's a marker there talking about that. And he gave the following remarks at his surrender. Quote, you have taken me prisoner with all my warriors. I am much grieved. For I expected if I did not defeat you, I expected to hold out much longer and give you more trouble before I surrendered. I tried hard to bring you into ambush, but your last general understands Indian fighting. The first was not so wise. When I saw I could not beat you by Indian fighting, I determined to rush on you and fight you face to face. I fought hard, but your guns were well aimed. The bullets flew like birds in the air and whizzed by our ears like the wind through the tree in winter. My warriors fell around me. It began to look dismal. I saw my evil day at hand. The sun rose dim on us in the morning. And at night, it sunk in a dark cloud and looked like a ball of fire. That was the last sun that shone on Black Hawk. His heart is dead and no longer beats quick in his bosom. He is now a prisoner of the white men, and they will do with him as they wish. But he can stand torture. He is not afraid of death. He is no coward. He is an Indian. Then Black Hawk makes an absolutely astounding statement, and I have never read or heard of this anywhere. Here's a direct quote. An Indian who is as bad as the white men could not live in our nation. He would be put to death and eaten up by the wolves. The white men are bad schoolmasters. They carry false looks and deal in false actions. They smile in the face of the poor Indian, cheat him, shake him by the hand to gain their confidence, make them drunk, to deceive them, and to ruin our wives. We told them to let us alone and keep away from us. But they follow and beset our paths and quarreled among us like the snake. They poisoned us by their very touch. We were not safe. We lived in danger. We were becoming like them. Hypocrites, liars, adulterers, lazy drones, all talkers, and no workers. Farewell, my nation. Black Hawk tried to save you. He tried to avenge your wrongs, but he's been taken prisoner, and his plans are stopped. He can do no more. He is near his end. His sun is setting, and he will rise no more. Farewell to Black Hawk. I don't know how anyone cannot be deeply impressed by the dignity of these words, given under such trying circumstances. I want to come now, as I near the end, to two of the greatest Indian chiefs, Chief Joseph and Chief Seattle. Now, these men were not just great Indians, they were great human beings. Buffalo Bill Cody called Chief Joseph the greatest Indian America ever produced. Edward Curtis, who devoted most of his life to photographing Indian life, remarked of Joseph, I think he was one of the greatest men who ever lived. Joseph assumed the chieftaincy of the Nez Perce upon the death of his father in 1871. Remember, this is the same tribe now that was so good to Lewis and Clark. Gave them horses, fed them, helped them out a great deal. Chief Joseph inherited a situation of almost impossible complexity, and I won't attempt to try to describe that or take the time to do so. But I do want to mention this, because he led his tribe, men, women, and children, more than 1,600 miles, repeatedly evading federal troops again and again and again. And he finally surrendered 30 miles south of the Canadian border, where he could have found safety. His famous words of surrender were recorded on the spot by a U.S. Army interpreter. Here they are. Quote, tell General Howard I know his heart. I am tired of fighting. Our chiefs are killed. Looking Glass is dead. Tuholho Sodi is dead. He who led our young men is dead. It is cold, and we have no blankets. The little children are freezing to death. My people, some of them, have run away to the hills. There's no blankets and no food. No one knows where they are. Perhaps freezing to death. I want to have time to go look for my children and see how many of them I can find. Maybe I shall find them among the dead. Hear, my chief, I am tired. My heart is sick and sad. From where the sun now stands, I will fight no more forever. Now, Joseph didn't regard his capture as a surrender, and this is not well known, I think, for two reasons. One, he expected reinforcements from Sitting Bull, and he had been promised by our government that if both sides laid down their arms, the Nez Perce could return to their homeland. As it turned out, Sitting Bull never arrived. And once again, our government failed to keep its promise. 15 months later, Joseph came to Washington, D.C. to plead the case for his people. He spoke for 2 hours. And in the words of one listener, he painted one of the most poignant portraits of Indian experience that has ever been voiced by any American. It is a speech of pathos and power, anger and dignity. And perhaps more than any other, this speech embodies the experience of a Native American after the arrival of Europeans on North American soil. Joseph died in 1904, 25 years later, still confined to the reservation, never allowed to return home. And Dr. Latham, the agency physician who had attended Joseph for the last 14 years of his life, explained the cause of his death very simply. Chief Joseph died of a broken heart. We all learned about Lewis and Clark, I suspect, sometime. I wonder if we learned about the Nez Perce and Chief Joseph and Joseph's father. I didn't. I know that. Finally, Chief Seattle gave probably the most revered speech of any Native American. This speech occurred when he spoke to a crowd of over 1,000 Indians waiting on the shore of the Puget Sound for the arrival of President Pierce's newly appointed governor of the Washington Territory. And he knew that the haughty little man who emerged from the ship represented the end of Indian dreams and visions as a free people. The speech he gave on the shores has been called, quote, one of the most moving eulogies and prescient admonitions ever spoken by a man and woman in any language. Unfortunately, he remains largely unknown to white America. I am frankly moved to tears when I ponder his words and consider the circumstances that prompted his words. Here are a few words. Your God is not our God. Your God loves your people and hates mine. He folds his strong arms around the white man and leads him by the hand as a father leads his infant son. But he has forsaken his red children if they are really his. How then can we be brothers? Can your God become our God? Can your God renew our prosperity and awaken in us dreams and return to greatness? If we have a common Heavenly Father, he must be partial. Or he came just to the white children. We never saw him. He gave you laws, but had no words for his red children, whose teeming multitudes once filled this vast continent as stars fill the firmament. No, we are two distinct races with separate origins and separate destinies. There is little in common between us. A few more moons, a few more winters, and that one of our descendants of the mighty host that once moved over this land or lived in happy homes protected by the Great Spirit will remain to mourn over the graves of a people once more powerful and hopeful than yours. But why should I mourn at the untimely fate of my people? Tribes follow tribes, nation follows nation, just like the waves of the sea. It is the order of nature, and regret is useless. Every part of this soil is sacred in the estimation of my people. Every hillside, every valley, every plain, every grove has been hallowed by some happy or tragic event in days long vanished. Even the rocks, which seem to be dumb and dead as they swelter in the sun along the silent shore, thrill with memories of stirring events connected with the lives of my people. And the very dust upon which you now stand responds more lovingly to the footsteps of my people than to yours, because it is rich with the blood of our ancestors, and our bare feet are conscious of the sympathetic touch. And when the last red man shall have perished, and the memory of my tribe shall have become a myth among the white men, these shores will swarm with the invisible dead of my tribe. Dead, did I say? There is no death, only a change of worlds. Magnificent and heartbreaking.
Thank you, Dick. Please stand if able and join in the singing of hymn 1031, which is in the blue hymnal. It's called Filled with Loving Kindness, 1031. Please be seated. During the several years of conversation about the proposed and ultimately endorsed revision of Article 2 of the UUA bylaws, the word love was bandied about quite a bit. It became the graphic theme, the center point, and the foundation of those advocating for the revision, the bumper sticker, if you will. But I don't recall that much discussion and exploration of the essence and or concept of love beyond broad generalities. So for the conclusion of this service and the extinguishing of the chalice, let me offer these words of yet another Unitarian, the American poet E.E. Cummings. Rich in language, expansive in concept, magic in metaphor, and something to contemplate about this thing called love. Love is more thicker than forget, more thinner than recall, more seldom than a wave is wet, more frequent than to fail. It is most mad and moonly, and less it shall unbe than all the sea which only is deeper than the sea. Love is less always than to win, less never than alive, less bigger than the least begin, less littler than forgive. It is most sane and sunly, and more it cannot die than all the sky which only is higher than the sky. A reminder that after the service, we adjourn to the gathering room. Those that want coffee and snacks of various sorts are back there. Some of them look pretty darn good, by the way. Then after about 15 minutes, Jim will ring the chimes, which will signal then a return back to this room, those that want, for a talk back with Dick about his service today. So when you do hear the chimes, it helps if you respond to them, if you want to come back here to the talk back, and I encourage you to do so. Sandy?